I believe the moment the EU will go live with their digital euro in October 2025, this is going to be a game changer in the West because many countries will follow the EU. They said it, they wrote it in their white papers. And I think that in the first couple of years, we're going to see a very nice and soft launch. And people are going to forget that this has very dystopian capabilities. And then when the time's right, the EU and other countries are going to gradually introduce more draconian measures because they can, and they may need to.
Welcome back to Hosting Bitcoin, where we're exploring the future of money, freedom, and human connection. Today, our guest is someone whose voice has become essential in helping people to see beyond the headlines and into the heart of what Bitcoin really means, as well as the global context that it sits in. Efrat Fenigson is a trailblazer, a thought leader, and an advocate for personal sovereignty and empowerment. Her work and her example show what it's like to stand firmly in your convictions, to challenge the status quo, and to inspire others to do the same. She's known for challenging assumptions, inspiring curiosity, and showing why Bitcoin isn't just a financial innovation, it's a cultural movement. Today, we're going to explore her personal journey, the power of media and marketing and technology, CBDCs, and why Bitcoin has the potential to transform not just our system, but our entire culture. Well, hello, Efrat. How are you?
I'm very well, Bo. Thanks for having me.
Welcome to Hosting Bitcoin. Where in the world are you right now?
Right now, I'm in Switzerland, in Lugano, after traveling around for the past 2 months.
Very
I
cool.
landed in
What are you
Lugano.
doing in Lugano?
I came here. I'm teaching at the Plan B Network summer school, which starts in about a week and a half. And I came early because I'm a digital nomad and I don't really have one place to live at the moment. So I'm kind of looking at all my options and just choosing the one that sounds the best. So I came early, and the team here at it's called Proof of Workspace. They have like a whole building that is a workspace, and it's got a gym, it's got like a huge expo area, it's got a startups area, workstations, it's got everything, and and I'm staying very close to it. So I'm like looking at how they're hosting me and what they've given me, and I'm like, why leave? And the best Bitcoiners, last night we had a meetup on the lake of Lugano with like huge, beautiful green mountains in the background. I felt like I'm in a dream. And
That's so cool.
yeah, my work takes me everywhere.
Is the digital nomad lifestyle recent for you, or have you been living this way for a while?
So I started like not formally, unofficially, about 2.5 years ago. I started doing this, and I was like, my dream would be to speak at Bitcoin conferences all around the world for a living. That's what I want to do. And of course, the podcast. And now, 2.5 years later, it's my reality. And now this year, 2025, I made it official that I'm a fully digital nomading. My house is in Israel, so I go back from time to time. Obviously, I couldn't go back recently because of the war. So I was kind of like stuck outside of Israel, but I wasn't stuck because here I said I want to be a digital nomad. So the universe was kind of like, there you go. You can be a full digital nomad now. No need to go back to where you came from. Just keep moving. And so I did. So I left Israel on the 20th of May. I went to Miami, had a conference. Then Vegas had a conference. Then Austin, Texas, spent time with Bitcoiners, interviewed Parker Lewis in Marty Bent's studio, just took over and interviewed him there. And kept going to Freedom Fest in California and did like a Bitcoin panel there and 2 panels actually and some interviews. and then went on to Prague and spent 2 weeks in Prague. And then went to Monaco and stayed with a friend. And now I'm in Lugano. I'm like all over the place. And it's just so weird and great. I'm used to be this like corporate, global corporate chief marketing officer, just, traveling to exhibitions, traveling to customers, traveling around the world for work, for my old Fiat life. And now it is just so different. Now I do whatever the fuck I want for myself, not for anyone else. I don't mind Fiat. I work on a Bitcoin standard as much as I can. I get paid in Bitcoin. I pay people in Bitcoin. I travel for Bitcoin stuff. I have a podcast. I get to meet all the brightest people ever. So this is like completely, I mean, yeah, you can say it's unexpected, but I asked for it. It was my dream, and now it's like coming true. So it's great. I'm very,
So,
very grateful.
what is it that called you to speak, to be more public, to get messages out? Because I know you didn't start that way. You had more of a technical background, and something very cool to me, you used to design video games. So
That's
what got
right.
you into more of the public eye?
So when I graduated from my computer science degree and started working as a developer, as a programmer, I did that for about 3 years. And you could say that, amongst the developing roles, I had one of the coolest ones because I was creating games for Nintendo and PlayStation and Xbox. And, I know so many guys that would love to have that kind of work. And it was fun, but it wasn't really me, It wasn't
Mm.
like who I am. I used to see all these guys coming to the office in the morning after dreaming about algorithms at night, and they'd go to their friends, I know how to crack that engine. Now I know. I dreamt about the code and I know. And I'm like, they're so weird. Like, they're so geeky and weird. And I'm not like that, And they take real pleasure out of cracking problems in code lines and speaking to the computer. And I don't. It's not that I was bad. I was pretty good at it, but I just didn't have that passion. What I did have passion for was to tell stories and create conversations and create relationships. And I did like technology. I really enjoyed my degree in tech. It was back in, like, now you'll know how old I am. It was like 2000 to 2003, more or less. So I was like, I want to stay in tech, but I don't want to create the technology. I want to create the conversations and the relationships around the technology. And so I kind of made my way in the next 4 or 5 years to teach myself how to do that, because I had no intention of going back to university. Like, fuck that. So I taught myself, and then I landed in marketing after like a few years. And when I started doing marketing for a living, it felt like all the pieces of the puzzle were in the right place. So it felt like home. It felt natural. It felt like that passion that those geeks had, like now I had it when I was successful in creating relationships and driving people to action. You know what marketeers do, and like really influencing a perception, creating awareness, all these things that marketeers really like doing, building brands. I felt like extreme joy when I had created a brand and it worked. Like, it pulled people in through the brand's mission and vision and values, and people would really align with that and would want to work with that brand. So that's where I kind of felt like, okay, that's where I need to be. I need to speak out. I need to create communications and relationships. And I did that for a living for the better part of like 15 years or so, while I was building marketing operations and business development operations for global companies all around the world, and managing teams, building, like, I'm good at the 0 to 1 stage, so I can take just an idea or work with an entrepreneur or founder or a CEO or even an investor and kind of do that first leap and build the team and build the go-to-market, the market research strategy, the total addressable market that we're looking at, like just doing the first, building the groundwork and the framework for what is to be the marketing operation later on, and then start growing the team. And so I worked mostly for private companies that's their need, when they are in A round, B round, C up to E round. So like they can become pretty mature, pretty large. But I haven't worked with public companies during my time. Anyway, the point is that I think around 2020, when COVID came, I decided that it wasn't enough for me to speak out and to make my voice heard just for business and for a company, but I have to also do that for what I need to stand up for in my life, for my values, for what I believe in. Because 2020 was the year that has changed many people's lives, when we have seen government overreach and, people telling us what to do, how to behave, what not to do, what to put in our body, all that kind of stuff. And I wasn't ready to go along with that shenanigan. And so I stood up, and I had to make a conscious decision because I was already in a very senior position, management of a company, managing a big team, big budgets. I'm a chief marketing officer. I have like responsibilities, and also I had my own business in parallel to that. 7 years of building a business with two partners where we had 150 CMOs like myself in a community. But it was a business, it was a paying kind of subscription community. And so I started speaking out. So from 2020 to 2025 till today, I'm on that trajectory of aligning with my own brand and with what I care about in the world and in life. And I think it was around 2022, as I was coming into Bitcoin, because I didn't come to Bitcoin a long time ago. It was only 3 years ago. So at the same time, more or less, I decided that if I'm going to be fired from my job for doing what I'm doing, then it's okay, bring it on, because now I'm ready after like 40 something years of preparing myself. I'm fully ready next time to be in service of humanity rather than in service of a CEO or making fiat for some investor. And so obviously it happened a little bit after I've anticipated it. And and I embarked on a new journey, which I define as a service for humanity. Like I speak out so that people get more informed about what's going on in the world. I try to research some of the global agendas, a lot of the things related to the monetary agendas, so that people have a clue about what's coming up. And obviously I merge that with my acquired knowledge of Bitcoin and try to show people a possible solution and not just put light on the problems, which a lot of the people from the freedom movement like doing. They get stuck on the problems. I have my criticism on that too. but basically, I voice my opinions, my views. I try to do it in the most responsible way I can. I sometimes get into quote unquote trouble for like speaking too much, but it's so weird because to me, it doesn't feel like it's too much. It feels like exactly what I need to say when I need to say it. So I say it, and then I see that people react to it as if I have done something personal to them by voicing my views. And I realize that my voice is quite influential and significant because it feels to them as if I am rug pulling them, as if I am, ruining their worldview, kind of shaking their worldview. And they don't like it. Tough luck, First of all, they don't have to listen to me. And secondly, they can living their lives. I'm just exposing things and giving people information so they can choose what to do with their life. I am all against coercion. And so free will, free speech, and free thought. Censorship is something that really annoys me because people try to censor me or silence me. But, c'est la vie.
It's one thing to make that decision for yourself to seek truth, to open yourself to how things really work and kind of navigate the world in that way. But I think it takes a huge amount of courage to share that message and to speak up. Is there like a core experience or a way that you grew up that you think predisposed you to show up that way?
I think the opposite is the truth in my case. I think I was born to speak. And throughout my childhood and my adolescence, the opposite has happened, meaning my parents always tried to take really good care of me, and they did. They're really great parents. They loved me, and they until today, like I'm 45, my mom still calls me and like, why are you not coming home? Where are you? It's like, come be with me. Come be next to me. So they're great parents, but they saw this, how would I say, native need that I have to speak out from a very young age. And they always tried to kind of tame it down in order to protect me. They wanted me to kind of be like everyone else and not show up too much and not like take center stage too much because it may hurt me. Because they're boomers, and they come from this generation where you have to be like everyone else to make it in life. And for them, they always played safe. And here I am, a child with a need to perform. I was always performing. Like I loved dancing, or I loved performing and singing, and whatever you would give me, I would do it. And so even when I didn't have crowd or an audience, I would sit people. This is like the childhood story in our family. Like I would make everyone sit down in the living room and tell them, okay, now it's showtime. I have to perform. And they would sit there, and I'd be like 3, 4 years old, 5 years old, and I'll do my performance because I had that need to to speak out and to say what I have to say and for people to listen to it. And I think it was very much in my DNA. Like I was born that way. And I was kind of on a trajectory to be really successful in life and to do what I wanted to do in life, but to fit in. Mm-hmm. Because that's how my parents brought me up. Like, you have to be like everyone else. And so it's, I even found out, just as an anecdote in hindsight, that when I was very young, 6 years old, first grade, they took me to do exams for, how do you call them, like super smart kids? I don't know how to say the word in English.
Like advanced placement exams?
I guess. It's like, when you're taken to like a special school for like genius, right? So they took me to do this exam and I passed. And they told me, like my parents told me that I didn't pass because they didn't want me to go to that special school. So I was left with that feeling of, oh, okay, you're not that special, you're like everyone else. It worked, obviously, because it made me like be humble and stay in the same school that I was in. But it was always very easy for me at school, and I would get bored. And so I would kind of transmute my energy into helping other kids. Like from the first grade, I would have a kid that was with me that was very slow, that the teacher told me, okay, you have to sit with him and help him do the homework. And he was my project. Like I would teach him everything. And so I always found ways to channel my, you could say, like excessive energy to a good place. But I think it was only recently, like in the last decade, or maybe like, let's say 15 years, that I have started tapping into and discovering that, you have really great power and you're kind of not disassociated, but not very close to your powers and to who you are. And you need to go on this kind of mission to get to know yourself better and get to the bottom of who are you really and why are you here and what is your gift and what can you give to the world and to other people. And why do you have those abilities that you have? And how can you use them? And so I did. So for the last decade, I was kind of owning my, my gifts and also handling my own internal dialogue of self-criticism and perfectionism and all that bullshit of having to have everything be perfect before I put it out there to the world. And I have that thing. So that's a burden, but I already know what my flaws are and I'm friendly with them. So I identify them and I keep going anyway. And I try to be as much of service as I can, to just put myself out there as much as I can. And it gets better with time. It gets easier. It's never easy, but it gets easier with time. And there are points where I can feel like I'm in my zone when I'm interviewing people on my podcast or when I'm doing public speaking. And people just let me speak without, you right now, for example, without telling me, oh, you've got 10 minutes, you've got 5 minutes, you've got 20 minutes, and then I'm super stressed to get it all right. But when I'm really being myself and being authentic and just free flowing with people, I can create connections really well and I can tap into people's energies and I can bring something that is very humane that people really identify with and have an easier time to learn from and listen to. Not everyone, of course, but many people. And that's really great because I feel that in that way I can really be of service. And that's why I also named my podcast You're the Voice, because I want to give people the stage and let them voice who they are and empower them to do that in a time where everything is so heavily controlled and centralized and people are afraid to speak out. And also because that's going to sound really silly, but I don't care. Many people tell me that I have a nice voice, to listen to. That, it's easy to listen to you. That's one of the repeating feedbacks that I get from people. It's easy to listen to you. So I need to speak so they can listen, you know what I mean? Because not everyone has a soothing voice or a voice that is easy to listen to. So if I already have one, I should use it and hopefully say smart words so that they can learn something too.
I love that background because it mirrors so nicely what you get to do now, which is it's one thing to show up as a genius, to understand the world around you in a way that other people don't necessarily get, but it's not necessarily very useful unless you can bring people along with you. So that early experience of getting to help other people in their schoolwork because you pretty much had it figured out. You could have just coasted and enjoyed your time and played more, but instead there was a calling to bring others along with you. And similar now, you had your kind of awakening, big shift moment a few years ago as the world was changing around you. And it wasn't just, let me save myself, but how can I bring this to more people? How can I bring people along with me? Because there's something to be said here. Does that resonate?
Absolutely. And during COVID, when I started speaking out and kind of, risking my position and my reputation and all that stuff, I started making those really crappy videos while I was going to demonstrations, just using my phone on a selfie, just doing 2 minutes or 5 minutes or 10 minutes, just telling people in English what's happening in Israel, because Israel was, as always, an interesting place to pay attention to, because many of the things that started in Israel then happened everywhere else. So I was kind of giving the people the heads up on what's coming. And I started getting feedback from all around the world. I think using Twitter was the biggest platform. Twitter and Rumble keep doing more of this. Like we need this. Please
Hmm.
do more. And so I was like, okay, they're asking, I will. So next week I would do another video, and then next week another video, and that kind of led me. I mean, content creation is not foreign to me since I've worked in marketing for 20 years, but I've never done it for myself in that way. And the feedback loop was there to show me that that's the right way and I should keep doing that. And so what you're saying really resonates, because it was about taking people along with me on the journey, showing them what's coming, kind of sharing myself, even though it's got its prices and it doesn't come without a price. What I chose to do, I still decided I'm going to do it because it's bringing people value, and that value transcends the price that I'm paying. And so, because of that, I'm very whole and complete with that decision. And I do experience a lot of hard moments where, people can be really nasty and hateful behind a keyboard. Like this today, the panel from Vegas came out, the panel that I was speaking at, and it's on YouTube. And the only comment, like only 30 people watched it, but there was one guy that commented and he wrote, Efrat is a grifter and she's deleting comments on her YouTube channel so that only her views can be heard or something like that. And that is such bullshit. You go to my channel, you see a lot of people making a lot of different opinions there. But people just love to hate and to polarize and to just like... So I pay prices for what I'm doing, but, it's part of the job, I guess. That's what I chose. That's the package.
It's to me, it's an indicator that you're on the right path. Is the more successful you are and the wider your reach gets in communicating your message, the more people are going to be upset by it. And it's almost a signal, especially in something as revolutionary and, against the mainstream narrative as something like Bitcoin, that the more people that you try to wake up, the more people are going to resist and get really angry about that and feel that kind of emotion that elicits that response.
And every time I choose like another demographic group to upset. So at first it was like, COVID. So then I was called names. You're an anti-vaxxer, all this bullshit. I don't give a fuck about vaccines. People can inject whatever they want, but it was like no coercion and free choice. That was my thing. So that was the first group. And then the second group was October 7th. I was the first person to kind of come out in English and speak out on the day and say that this was allowed to have happened based on my military experience and the fact that I know how the drill should look like, and it did not look like what it's supposed to look like. And people were dying, and I was like completely upset and had to kind of warn people that they're on their own and they have to take care of themselves. Like if you thought the government's coming to rescue, the police, the IDF, no one's coming to rescue. You're on your own. This is it. And I also spoke out about the motives behind it and why are they doing it and all that. And then I acquired the second group that started calling me ridiculous names like self-hating Jew. And what else would they call me? They couldn't call me anti-Semite because I'm Jewish and Israeli. So they called me self-hating Jew. Believe me, they would call me anti-Semite if they could. It just doesn't make sense. And they called me, a conspiracy theorist, self-hating Jew. I think that was like my flagship name. Anyway, it was ridiculous. And then third group is probably, and this is kind of interesting because with Bitcoin, I didn't expect this to aggravate anyone, because here I am coming to you with like this great solution. Here's this great tech. And if there's one thing I know how to do is to do marketing for technology, right? I've done this for 20 years. And so if I already have the balls to come and talk to you about this technology, I probably have done my research, and I still do, but I've been obsessed with learning Bitcoin when I came into it, like everyone that I know. And so when I felt confident enough to start talking about it, I expected people to just be like, oh, this is great. And many do. And they get curious and interested, and then they go on the orange pill journey thanks to my work. And I'm super grateful for that. But then there was this group of people that is mostly from the so-called freedom movement. They love freedom, right? They're all about freedom. And they know me from COVID. They may know me from October 7th stuff, But then they hear me talk about money and CBDCs and Bitcoin. And first of all, they start criticizing, since when did you become a money expert? It's like, fuck this. I become an expert of whatever I want to become in this life. Like, that's how I roll, always. Like, I don't have a marketing degree. Can you say that I am not a marketing expert? Like, fuck you. I've done this for 20 years. I know what I'm talking about in marketing. But it's the same. Like, we have such an obsession with getting that label of an expert on something. That is our label, that we need that stamp in order to feel safe, that the person who is talking to us is certified by someone or somewhere and is telling the truth. And that is such crap and bullshit. And it's because we got used to never verify. We just trust. So just to make a long story short, that third group of freedom lovers who is hearing about Bitcoin, they go, no, but cash is king. But and so I stop and I say, look, cash is great. No problem with cash, right? Cash is good for our privacy. We're happy with that. And yeah, we can hold it, we can trade it. Like, this is very close to barter. This is nice. But do you know what cash is? Do you know that cash is fiat? Do you know what fiat is? Do you know that cash that you're holding is worth less and less every moment because the government is behind it and they can debase? And then they stop because they don't know, and they don't know what inflation is, but they don't want to know. They're not interested in learning anymore. For them, learning about COVID or whatever global agenda is, climate, was enough. They don't want to learn anymore. And so this is the group that I'm now targeting, that I've taken on as my mission to crack and break, because it pisses me off, not in a bad way, just in a humoristic way. Because if I can crack them, then, and I know I can, because some of them are breaking. But the thing is that they're too lazy, and they have to understand they have to do the work. They have to do the work. It's not enough to just listen to me being an expert or anyone else and going, okay, I listened to Michael Saylor, so now I trust him. No, you have to actually pick up a book or a podcast or a movie or something and start learning what is fiat and what is Bitcoin and why they are so different and why your cash is far from being king. It's nice and all, but it's far from being king. So every time I aggravate a different demographic group, that's my challenge in life, I guess.
Have you ever felt like you've done everything right, built the business, made smart investments, and yet there's still one piece missing? If you're someone who believes in Bitcoin but hasn't yet explored mining, let me introduce you to something that most people never even realize exists, and that is fully managed Bitcoin mining with Abundant Mines. We help high net worth individuals like you own industrial grade mining infrastructure without ever touching the machines. It's hands-free, professionally hosted, and designed to generate passive income by turning electricity into Bitcoin every single day. It's tax advantaged, it's asset backed, and for many of our clients, it's become one of the smartest moves that they've ever made in their investing career. So if you're ready to take the next step into real Bitcoin ownership, not just holding, but producing it at a discount, visit abundantmines.com. That's abundantmines.com, and see why this strategy is changing the game for serious investors. So going off of that, I know recently you've been speaking all over the world. And one of the titles of your talks is the musical chairs of the monetary order. So tell me what that's about, and does that play into you educating this particular group and getting them to see what this is all about?
Yeah, it's educating that group for sure because it's showing them how the monetary system is turning into a digital one. So their cash, great, but it's definitely not digital. And whether they like it or not, that change is coming. So, it's your choice if you want to just learn about it and get educated, or you want to stay behind with your barter and your cash, or start bartering with chickens with your neighbors. I mean, go ahead. If you can live like that, that's great. But the moment you want to scale and that's inefficient, you're going to come and look for money again. And so, yeah, so in part, this is for that group too, to educate them. And then the second part is to educate Bitcoiners, because Bitcoiners that are so immersed in Bitcoin, and especially the ones that are from Western countries and have it pretty well with their fiat and Bitcoin situation, like they see Bitcoin as an investment and
Mm-hmm.
fiat is still there, still functioning. There is no hyperinflation in the country that they live in. Then it's for them as well, because it kind of bursts their bubble that they're a bit complacent, in thinking that I'm good with my I don't know my Bitcoin savings, and I keep putting fiat there a little bit, little by little, and I'll be fine. But then they don't realize that if they don't really hedge their lives for, preparing for a big change, then they're not really ready. I mean, have they looked at their pensions? Have they looked at the different taxes that they pay for their real estate, for example? Is it worth it? And I'm not talking about the ultra rich people that can have many mansions and they don't give a fuck, what happens. Like, they're fine. I'm talking about the middle class and people like me. I don't know about you, but people like me that are not that rich, and they really care about their savings, and they have a child or two or three, and they want to make sure that they live off well. I think they really need to be aware of what's coming with the CBDCs or stablecoins and even Bitcoin, and kind of prepare themselves and how they live, kind of adapt their lives to it. So if you want me to give you like a gist of that talk, I
Yeah, please.
can. Yeah, so basically what I've done in that talk is I've tried to map out the evolving global financial landscape, looking at how global agendas, nation states, and financial institutions are kind of piecing together a new monetary system under the banner of innovation, security, and climate action. These are like the drivers behind their official excuses for why we need a monetary change. The puzzle pieces of this big map are digital currencies like stablecoins, CBDCs, and even Bitcoin, as well as carbon markets and digital IDs. So they're all pieces of this puzzle, and you can play around with them. And in different countries, they have different weights to them, depending on where you are. And what I've done in that presentation, will probably come out soon from BTC Prague, is to map out the kind of the fast changing chessboard, to connect those dots between the financial trends, the political agendas, and the fight for economic freedom, and kind of see where the balance is. So essentially, I started with looking at the famous fourth turning, that every 80 to 110 years we see a change in world empires, and we're now at the end of a cycle. And at the end of every cycle, we experience crises, emergencies, pandemics, wars. This is historical. You can look back like 500, 600 years, and you will see that in every transition phase between one empire to another, that period is always characterized with the same type of life. And then the question is, will the US, that is currently the world empire, and the US dollar maintain their position in the next cycle? Or is it going to be another empire? Because we've had, let me just pull it up so I can be accurate. So we've had Portugal, and then Spain, and then Netherlands, and then France, and then Britain, and then the US. Like people live like the US was always the world leader, but every 80 to 110 years, it really changed. And the world's reserve currency has also changed together with that. And so I think that was like the leading question that I came out with. And I had shown how different experts like Ray Dalio and Dr. Pippa Malmgren are actually showing us, telling us that we are on a brink of a change of the monetary system, and the new monetary system is going to be digital, and different countries are going to implement it in different ways, depending on their preference. And the way I see it is that right now we are in the smorgasbord or buffet breakfast kind of stage. So it's the buffet breakfast of monetary instruments, and each country is experiment. It's like, imagine that you have like all the chefs preparing everything on that buffet and putting out all the dishes, and everyone's trying different dishes. They're experimenting with it until they find the chef's favorite. And then each country, I think by the end of the decade or the next few years, is going to kind of land on its preferred monetary instrument that it wants to work with. But I'm pretty sure that all countries or all nation states are going to work on a digital framework that is going to be somehow connected between them. Now, this is the hard part, how to connect them. And they may do a horrible work in connecting it because, as we know, governments are not very efficient when it comes to technology, and they always take private companies to help them implement that. And so they're all in that stage. They are actually building a lot of things. Like, just to give one example, the central banker from Singapore, he's talking about, this is from a few months ago, he's talking about the fact that they started implementing different CBDC pilots, and the retail CBDC, so like the actual payments and the wallets and all that stuff. And when they got to the stage of looking at cross-border and between countries, like how do we actually, move money and settle between countries, the interoperability and all that stuff, they realized that it's not that easy, like what they thought. And so they went back to the planning table, the design table, and they came up with this new project called Global Layer 1. Right? So where does the name ring a bell? Layer 1, right? We have Layer 1 for the past 15 years that is working pretty well. It's called the Bitcoin blockchain. And our Layer 1 is kind of reliable and secure. But they are kind of reinventing the wheel right now. They are recreating a blockchain. The same guy, the central banker from Singapore, he's talking about the fact that we have looked at our options. So there is a blockchain out there that is public, but you cannot expect us to use something like that, right? Us. You cannot. And then we looked at private solutions, and they're also not very good because they don't have the network effect. So we decided to kind of land in the middle and create this new blockchain that will be public and permissioned. So they're now working on a new project called Global Layer 1, which is a multi-year project, and it's going to cost them millions and billions of dollars to put together. And it's a cohort of about 20 or 30 financial institutions and banks that are trying to build that Global Layer 1. And there's a document that they put out there about it. And so this is just one example that I'm showing in my talk of how like trying to reinvent the wheel is so expensive and inefficient and takes so much time. When it's already there, you can join or you can fight it. So the US, for example, is deciding to join, as we're seeing. It's looking at the options as well. It may not be talking about it so openly like the guy from Singapore is talking about it, but that's what they've done. They've looked at their options and they're like, okay, this looks like the best option right now. We have to go digital. Like, this is an inevitable change that is coming, and we're choosing the Bitcoin way. And the way that they're choosing is also heavily reliant on identification and permission. So it's the KYC route, obviously, and the route that the US has taken is through stablecoins first. So then stablecoins become a very, very important pillar in this new digital monetary system, but I believe it's a transitory phase that will probably phase out at one point. I mean, it may stay as a fiat kind of parallel or a fiat twin or something like that. But it will never serve as the world's reserve asset. Bitcoin can, okay? But stablecoins can take us there. So the legislation we're seeing right now in the US of stablecoins is definitely bringing us faster and closer to that goal of strengthening Bitcoin as the world's reserve currency. It opens up the door for the traditional finance system to become digital. And it is digital today, but you know what I mean, like not the digital fiat that we have today with credit cards and all that, but actually working in a fully digital way, which is not CBDCs. At the same time, you see the block of the EU aligning itself with China a lot more, where China is taking the CBDC route. And the EU is making a point, don't ask me why, but they're making a point of showing how much they are learning from China and doing what the Chinese are doing and are succeeding with, and they're not really succeeding with it, but that's what they're pretending to. And I think it's a timing thing as well, because when the EU and Trump are not really getting along, then the EU needs another ally, and China is kind of there for them. So on the monetary front as well, they're making use of it. And Christine Lagarde just came back from a big tour in China, and she was very happy to share with the world her new ally for the monetary game that she's playing. And with the digital euro that she's about to launch in October 2025, 3 months from now, right? This is going to be a game changer in the West, because many countries will follow the EU. So the moment the EU will go live with their digital euro, you're going to see many new CBDC pilots, or already the products themselves being launched in other countries that are just waiting for someone else to be the first. You know, like Israel, for example, or India, they're all waiting for someone else to be first. They said it, they wrote it in their white papers. If we see that other countries are doing it, we want to be prepared. So we're working on our solution as well. And so the EU is going to be first, and they're going to have a period of about 2 years to roll it out. So the moment they start, people think that when I say October 2025 for the digital euro, it means that in October 2025, all of the citizens of the EU are going to have a new wallet and they have to start using CBDCs for a living. And no, it cannot be done that way. Anyone that knows technology knows that every rollout is gradual, and it always has phases. And so they are defining it in a time frame of 2 years, and they're going to spend a few hundreds of millions of euros on that period of building up the infrastructure and scaling it. And I think that in the first couple of years, we're going to see a very nice and soft launch of this CBDC. And people are going to forget that this has very dystopian capabilities. They're going to get used to how cool and convenient that is. Oh, and it's harmless, you know? It's like, I use it every day. It's really cool. It's really fast. It's really immediate, and it's convenient, and da-da-da. And then when the time's right, the EU and other countries are going to gradually introduce more draconian measures, because they can, and they may need to. If push comes to shove, you know, they may need to become more aggressive, just like they were during COVID. So the fact that they have the capability of doing that with a technology like CBDCs just means that, you know, if you're European and you haven't protected yourself with Bitcoin yet, then you're behind, and you better start. Yeah, so this is just like a taste of it. I have like lots more in that presentation, but basically, my focus during that presentation was CBDCs and just showing how different countries are preparing for their CBDCs and then stable coins, and just to give you a rough idea of how I don't know if successful is the word, but how popular stablecoins experimentation is. You currently have about 70 running projects around the world for different countries and also financial institutions like banks or other corporations that are issuing their own stablecoins and trying it. I mean, JP Morgan is the most famous example, but they've had it for about 4 or 5 years now. And people are not aware because this is not being marketed or publicized so much. But JP Morgan transaction volume on their JP Morgan stablecoin exceeds $1 billion per day today, just so
Wow.
you understand. They're actually working with their stablecoin. It's the JP Morgan coin. And obviously, we know Tether, who is just like phenomenally doing amazing. What's the volume? $140 billion in circulation, and they're 18th holder of U.S. Treasuries with $103 billion worth of treasuries. And I'm sure this number is not is outdated now because a few days have passed since I've done this. Yeah, so stablecoins are really like becoming very popular very fast. I think it's going to grow even more. Countries in Asia are experimenting with stablecoins like Thailand, Cambodia, Hong Kong, Singapore, like many, many countries. And also because of experimentations with stablecoins, they sometimes drop their CBDC plans because they see it's probably easier and better. And I think that that is probably a path or a trajectory we're going to see more and more of. Like they're going to experiment with CBDC and stablecoins and Bitcoin, and they're going to land on probably stablecoins, which will lead them to Bitcoin at one point. Like Thailand is a good example. They started with CBDCs, retail pilots that were quite draconian, and then they did stablecoins pilots. I think they saw that it's pretty good. And at the same time, there's a very strong Bitcoin community in Thailand that is kind of doing their work. They're kind of sitting on the politicians' shoulders and eating their heads with Bitcoin, Bitcoin, Bitcoin all the time. So I guess it worked to some extent because they recently launched a pilot in Phuket, one of the islands, to be a Bitcoin island. So they accept Bitcoin now in Phuket. This is like a government, like a top-down initiative, which is quite rare.
Wow.
And they're experimenting and seeing what the results are. And I believe that if they see that, you know, it works and it's cool, they're probably going to stay with the stable coins and the Bitcoin rather than the CBDCs. But that's the kind of phase that we're in. It's that buffet that I was talking about. You're eating from everything until you find your chef favorite, and then you land on it. And then the last thing I talked about in that presentation is carbon markets, which I think are pretty interesting. I don't know if that's going to work out for them, but it's definitely something that they want. When I say they, it's like the powers that be, whatever, the nation states or whoever is above them. They're kind of interested in taking this whole carbon thing as a like driven by the climate agenda. They want to show that you need to act on minimizing the amount of carbon that you're emitting. You know, you as a mining business, you probably know that because they, you know, they give incentives to those businesses who are emitting less carbon. And that is just such, yeah, it's just really sad to see it because that climate agenda is really impacting every area of our lives, and it's disguised by this really honorable and virtuous language where in fact it's there to tax us and to just put more and more limitations on how we live our lives. And so if you take it one step further, the ones that will adopt a real draconian CBDC measure can also base it on their carbon credits. So, if in China they have no problem of saying this is your social credit score, in the West they will not say it because they know it's like one step too far, but they would say this is your carbon credit score. And you need to adhere to like a positive score and make sure that you don't spend too much carbon. And if you did, then we may freeze your wallet or, not allow you to buy any more fuel or steak or whatever, or travel anymore. So that is a possibility. I really hope they don't succeed. But the way it looks right now is they are investing a lot of money in tokenizing nature and creating more and more activity and volume of deals on carbon markets. Like, for example, Microsoft signing forest restoration deal to remove 3.5 million tons of CO2, right? These kind of examples, you can find them every day in the papers. So it's happening. Carbon market investor kicks off 1.5 billion Amazon protection plan in Davos, like an article in Reuters, right? So those things are happening more and more. I really hope that they will fail with that really ridiculous plan of kind of owning nature. Now they want to tokenize water as well. We've tokenized air and carbon. Now let's tokenize water. And like, what next? What else? Like, what else do you want to create a financial market for? This is ridiculous. Like taking over natural resources. And yeah, I think this is a real sign of the end of the fourth turning, when fiat becomes so broken and so corrupt that, and the debt is so big that you kind of have to hold on to whatever you can. And you try to milk that cow even more. And it becomes ridiculous. Like it becomes so weird that we are creating all those monetary instruments and all those markets to try and milk more fiat from, just because we're already like desperate, And then comes Bitcoin, and
Well,
there's a ray
one
of
thing
light in the end of that story.
that's why we're all here, right?
Yeah,
There's a couple things I wanted to ask you about on
yeah,
what you just said, which is most people probably don't understand what the difference between, you mentioned retail CBDCs, between retail and wholesale
yeah.
CBDCs. So if you could walk through that. And also, many people who are not familiar with this space would say, well, the banking system currently is digital. They monitor everything I do. You can still get debanked today. Why is the CBDC so much worse? And if you could talk to
Yeah, so let's
why is a
start with
CBDC
that, with
so
the end.
different?
So, yeah, sure. So I think the last statement you just gave there is very accurate. And that is what Caitlin Long just said to me on the recent episode that I released with her on my podcast. And I asked her that question too. And she said, yeah, that's what most people conflate today. Most people think that CBDC is so draconian and scary and bad because there is no more privacy when we have CBDCs and it becomes completely surveilled. But she said, at least in the US, with the evolution of financial regulation, starting with the Patriot Act, the Bank Secrecy Act, and others, and now with stablecoins, etc. She said we're already completely surveilled, and if the government wants to know something about you, they can, no problem. I think the whole concept of I'm losing my privacy and I'm being surveilled when I have CBDCs is probably also true for stablecoins and to a certain extent to KYC Bitcoin as well. Now, I'm not saying that to, you know, dump on stablecoins and KYC Bitcoin because that's the reality. I mean, whether I like it or not, it's going to be very popular and pervasive in the next few years. And that's what people are going to use. And I acknowledge that, even if I don't like it, I acknowledge that. However, I think that if people really do want to preserve a level of privacy and a level of sovereignty from the state and a level of independence, they do need to learn about the difference between KYC and non-KYC and how Bitcoin allows you to transact peer-to-peer with people outside of the fiat system. You really do not need any permission from anyone to just transact with someone over the Bitcoin blockchain. Now, if you choose to become part of the KYC system, and that's how you prefer to hold your money and transact, fair enough. But just be aware. Just be aware of the risks you're taking. Be aware of the information that is out there. Be aware of what people may know or not know about you. Be aware of how you handle your UTXOs, etc. And people don't really take the time to learn that. And I think that becomes even more important as we walk into that era of different types of financial digital instruments. Each one has its own tweak and flavor and characteristic, and it's upon us to learn the differences between them. So yes, I don't think that there is a huge difference between CBDCs to stablecoins and KYC Bitcoin, because I really think that there is a low probability for governments to go the full dystopian route. I think that even if they do launch their CBDCs, they are not going to go like full 1984. They are still going to be okay with people because they do want to preserve some level of law and order and, society acceptance. They don't like people revolting. And if you'd asked me this 2 years ago, I would probably say, no, CBDC bad, Bitcoin good, that's it, black and white. No, there is gray there, and I don't think it's going to be all bad. But you really need to get educated. Now, you asked about the difference between, and I'm sorry that my answer is not like conclusive, because it's very hard to be conclusive. Yes, there is surveillance and privacy problems today already in the current system, and CBDC is not going to make it so much worse. It's just that it may make it a little bit more complicated for the government to actually track you and get to you if you hold KYC Bitcoin rather than you holding CBDC, and they have their hand on the switch and can really directly turn your wallet on and off. Okay, but then if you hold KYC Bitcoin, they have to maybe issue a warrant, go through Chainalysis or other companies, and then ask for the trail of your Bitcoin and then see what you've done. And if so, call you up. So it may be a longer process. And as governments do, they may use some people as example just to scare everyone else off and, to set some precedents. And that normally works because it's an effective deterring tactic. But it doesn't mean that they have the capacity to do that with each and every person. You got to remember the numbers game. Like, we are many and they are very few. And even if they succeed in launching their technocratic government that they want to launch, starting maybe in the US and then everywhere else, they may still not have the enforcement power to go after everyone and, try to claim everyone's Bitcoin or whatever currency they're using. Anyway, I keep optimistic. I have to. And then to your second question, the difference between retail CBDC and wholesale CBDC. So it's quite simple. The retail CBDC is, you can compare it to your Venmo app or any other payment app which is on the individual's device. Okay, that's retail CBDC. When you say retail, it goes back to the individuals. It's between the central bank and you, the individual. And that is the only other form of relationship that exists today between the individual and the central bank is cash. Like the central bank is issuing cash, and you hold a liability that is a direct liability from the central bank. And a retail CBDC can also be that, can be an app that is created by the central bank or maybe a private company hired by the central bank. It doesn't matter, but the central bank is issuing those tokens, those CBDCs, the central bank digital currencies, and putting them directly in your wallet. And you have a relationship directly with the central bank, and they have the enforcement capability of what you do or not do with your digital wallet and your digital currency. Now, that's retail. Wholesale is very similar to what we know today of the relationship between the central bank and the commercial banking system. So the central bank, just like they print money today and lend it to the commercial banks, so you can imagine that they print CBDCs on the computer and they lend it to the commercial banks. And wholesale is because they wholesale it to the banks. And they can have relationship directly with the commercial banks that will then have a relationship with the end consumer, just like Revolut Bank, for example, right? So you have Revolut Bank taking money from the central bank, and Revolut and you have a relationship because you are a customer of Revolut, and then Revolut will be the one issuing CBDCs on behalf of the central bank. So that's like a two-tier architecture, and most countries, to be honest, are going to be using that kind of tactic. They're going to leave the relationship part to the commercial banks or other corporations. For example, a big supermarket chain, right? Like Carrefour or whatever. They can issue their own CBDCs as well, or stablecoins even, and the central bank will lend them, and they will then issue. Just like you have a loyalty card or a credit card today with a supermarket chain or any other corporation. So that is the wholesale model, and it's more popular. Like from all the research that I've been doing, most countries are going that route, the wholesale route. And they're going to be allowing they call them not payment providers, they call them financial, I forget. Anyway, there's an abbreviation for it, like they do with everything. But they're going to have like a second tier of commercial banks and corporations that receive the authorization to hold their relationship with the end consumer, and they're going to be lending them the CBDCs. And the other side of wholesale CBDC is their interoperability with other central banks and other countries, which is what we talked about when we gave the Singapore example. And so they need to also, as part of their wholesale CBDC project, they need to take care of cross-border transactions and settlement of transactions in CBDCs between different countries. And that's part of the wholesale CBDC mechanism. Yeah, and the reason why I don't think they're going to go retail CBDC is because, one, it's dystopian, and two, like it scares people off, and then people resist, and they know it. Like the central banker of Thailand said that because of the pushback they got, they decided to pull away from their retail CBDC pilots, and they're going the wholesale CBDC route. So they listen, they know. And so I think they're going to pull away from it, and they're going to take the multi-layer approach. In Israel, that's what they're working on, and in many other countries, and EU as well. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. But there's a different, I mean, yeah, retail and wholesale, it could be semantics, but it also could be a softer version of CBDC if it's wholesale. So let's hope that it's the latter.
I think it's super important to highlight, because most people don't do any kind of deep dive really research on these technologies and how they're being implemented and how many of them are being piloted in some way.
Yeah.
What do you hope is your impact from shining a light on what's going on with CBDCs and just the broader financial system and how they're trying to remake it? What do you want your impact of speaking out about it to be?
I want people to prepare with learning Bitcoin and understand that they need sound money, because all this talk about CBDCs and moving into a fully digital financial era is all good, but there's still an issuance who is the state. There's still the ability to debase. Nothing changes in that capacity when you move to a digital currency. And with Bitcoin, the rules of the game change. You don't have an issuer. I mean, we know the mining process, but you don't have one centralized authority that is issuing, and you don't have the ability to inflate excessively the currency and debase everyone that is playing that monetary game. And so obviously Bitcoin has its disadvantages, and the more you research into it, the more you understand that it's not perfect and it needs to be maintained and worked on. And it's really good that the consensus mechanism exists in Bitcoin, because people do spend the time to try and make it better and fight. but but I think it's all for like a positive goal. And my hope is that people will understand that even if they were complacent and uneducated or malinformed about money until today, it's time for them to start getting interested and paying attention, because whether they like it or not, they live in a time of a turn in the fourth turning. And when you live in such a time, you're going to get hit by what's coming. And so I think you're in a better position when you actually learn and educate yourself and prepare for what's coming in the best possible way. And, if you're afraid of Bitcoin, fair enough, hold gold at least. Just have sound money. But at least do the work and learn about money. I think it's super important. If you want to leave something for your kids, I would do that.
As we wrap up here, what would your advice be to someone who wants to protect their sovereignty and protect their freedom in a fast-changing world?
I would encourage. I mean, I feel like I'm repeating myself, but it's all about education. It's all about learning, because if you want to protect yourself, you have to start by what kind of skills am I missing? What kind of information gap do I have? What kind of topics am I not well versed in? And it's not like you have to be an expert on everything now, but if you map out those essential topics and areas of your life, like health, food, money, these are energy, these are things that are super core in our lives. And if we don't know how systems are running around those topics, then we are powerless, and our power is with someone else. And so if we want to reclaim our power back and build our sovereignty, we have to educate ourselves. So we have to map out what the gap is, and we have to spend the time in learning. And there are no shortcuts. I mean, the only shortcut would be to listen to my podcast, but no, I'm joking. But read some books and listen to podcasts and watch. There is just a wealth of information out there today, not just about Bitcoin, but about all the topics I mentioned and more. Like, you just need to sit down and do the work. And that is going to be the difference between a sovereign individual and a powerless individual in the next coming years.
Beautifully, beautifully said. And thank you for sharing your time with our audience. And thank you for using your voice to help create a change. And thank you as well for inspiring women, because we need more women to be
absolutely
comfortable using their voice in this space.
That's right. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
How can people, if they want to keep up with you, find you on social, your podcast? How can they keep up with what you're working on?
So if you're interested in the information we talked about CBDCs and all that, I think the best place is my Substack, my blog, which is efrat.blog. And if you're interested in my just shit posting and commentary, then Twitter and Nostr. I'm on both. And because I really believe in decentralization and I've been censored many times, then I'm everywhere. So I have a YouTube channel and Rumble and everything, and I operate all of them. And it's quite tiring, but you can find the link to my link tree with all of my work, including my podcast called You're the Voice, on my Twitter, or in every social media platform. You'll find one link, and that will give you everything.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Efrat. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and thanks for coming on Hosting Bitcoin.
Thanks for having me.